realize Scotland people are here.
Greetings and welcome to Nox Mente at this special time. Tonight's guest is Thomas Sheridan. Thomas is an author, artist, and filmmaker from Dublin, Ireland. He came to international recognition in 2011 in his book Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath. A former rock musician, corporate communications consultant, and stand-up comic, Thomas has used his arsenal of past experiences to help both himself and others to navigate the often surreal, pathological landscape of mayhem and mystery. From history to advertising, dogma to deceptions that we, as a human species, often find ourselves caught within. Thomas, welcome to the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, our pleasure is ours.
Yes, we've definitely been looking forward to this one, Thomas.
It's been a while since I've done an interview, so you're practically getting me as a virgin again.
Excellent.
This is like no interview you've ever had, I guarantee.
Yeah, it's
just be gentle with me.
Oh, of course.
I'll have to remember that. I'll put the gloves on. Anyway, let's move into it. Tell us about the world you grew up in, Thomas, and kind of what we're looking for, things that stick out that have symbolic significance. So possible early programming like cartoons. Did you have a relationship with nature? And any early dreams you may recall?
Wow, what a fantastic question to ask. That's wonderful. No one's ever asked me that before. I love that. Thank you. Early memories, violence, basically. I grew up in Ireland at a time when there was a lot of political problems. And I was nearly blown up by a car bomb when I was about 10, not about 8 or 9, I think. And that stepped me into reality very quickly. I suddenly stopped being a child at a very early age and became a very serious, intense kid. Very, very serious. And not like that I was morose or anything like that. I was a very jolly character, as I've been all my life. But I was aware of the finality of existence at a very early age. And it was a very strange experience to be thrown into reality in such a visceral way at that age. And so from an extremely early age, I was throwing myself into Encyclopedia Britannicas, which I used to read from cover to cover. I took an interest in astronomy. I took an interest in electronics and science and art. And music, the first record I bought when I was 9 years old was Life on Mars by David Bowie. So I jumped into life in a very intense way. I was a very intense child at a very young age. And I wasn't a misfit. I had friends. I had a pretty normal school life. I didn't have any problems in that regard. And it was just a regular working class, like Irish life back in the 70s. As a kid growing into the 80s, which kind of became fantastic because it was a whole awakening for me. Now you talk about like influences. I didn't even really watch that much TV as a kid. I used to watch we used to have the Irish TV stations and we had the British TV stations. I lived in the east coast of Ireland in a tower block, so we used to play with to put a big antenna on top of the roof and see the BBC and the UTV and all these British channels, Granada and all these kind of things, and Welsh television. Here, I remember hearing Welsh at a very early age, and it made me realize I lived on an island. And like all island people, you sort of have this trajectory that outside is amazing, or it's different. So it's like there's a huge world out there. But at the same time too, it was like I went very deep into Ireland as well when I was. When I was 10, they took us on a school trip to the Boyne Valley, which is about 40 miles north of Dublin. And it's one of the most remarkable megalithic, ancient sacred site landscapes on the face of the earth. The Hill of Tara is there, Newgrange is there, the megalithic chambers of Nout and Doubt are there. And that was an enormous, gigantic influence on me the day that happened. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by sacred sites and ancient sites and megaliths all over the world. And that began that love affair. Although I grew up in a very urban area, there was a there was an old ancestral land. It was like belonged to a like a wealthy family, and they vanished years ago. I think they were the house was destroyed during the Irish War of Independence in the 20s, and so it just had been left. A wild wood had been left in a kind of an enclave in this urban area. Was this amazing wild wood, and when I say wild, I mean it was literally ancient. A proper diversity of like ancient species, ancient oaks, ancient ash, ancient elms, and I had my first mystical experiences in this place. Now, I didn't see anything, but I felt it. I felt that there was an intelligence to nature. I can remember there was one specific part of it where a river ran through it. There was an island in the middle of it, and the island was only accessible by two trees that were kind of falling on top of each other. So it was like a tree bridge. And at the time, I was reading stories like Mark Twain's stories about Huckleberry Finn, and I remember being very taken by those stories of life in America at that time. And here was I, kind of like, even though in urban 1970s Ireland as a kid, kind of experiencing the same thing, the kind of wildness and stuff like that, in a very limited, tiny area. And I had the first spiritual experiences there. Now, what was amazing about that was many years later, I discovered that that was probably the original Thor's Grove, the Viking Grove of Dublin, because before the Christians reconquered Brian Boru and the Christians reconquered Dublin from the Vikings, the first thing they did was go to the north of the city and destroy a wood that was known as Thor's Grove. In fact, Dubliners, like I'm a Dubliner myself, we were known as uh, Tomar Muntir in Irish language, which means the people of Thor. We were pagans, and we spoke Norwegian and Irish, a kind of a hybrid of both. And most of us have Norwegian as well as Irish ancestry. And I discovered years later that the name of the place was called Santry, which translates from the Irish to Shannon Three, which means the land of the old tribes. And so I was taken by fate, fortune, kismet, whatever, into a pagan ancient landscape in the middle of the city where I lived. And it had such a profound effect on me that I've carried with me till this day. So it's almost like I have felt from day one that doors were opening for me to make me understand my ancestry, my magical and spiritual destiny as much as possible. And so that was basically my life. Now, in terms of pop culture growing up, I was mad for music. I was a huge, like I said, a massive David Bowie and Queen fan from day one. And then when the punk rock thing came along, that was a huge influence on me. I loved the Sex Pistols. I loved the Jam. I didn't really like the Clash that much. Then I fell madly in love with Susie and the Banshees, which are probably my all-time favorite band. And then that led into me learning to play music and wanting to play in bands myself. So yeah, that was that's pretty much my childhood, growing up years.
How old were you when you had the first mystical experience in the Thor's Grove wood?
I'd say I was about 12 and I was skipping school. I remember like my friend of mine, Tommy Farrell, and the two of us, we had like a late afternoon on a Friday. A last class was like economics or something like that. And we used to skip that class and go into the woods. And I can remember, I'll tell you what it was. I was seeing a red squirrel going up a tree. I know that sounds very mundane. I know in America you're surrounded by wildlife. You know, that's nothing. But when you grow up in an inner city area and you see a red squirrel, that's a pretty profound experience. And I can remember that moment of silence, the absolute silence of the woods. There was no traffic noise, there was no nothing. The spiritual experience, yeah, about 12, about 11, 12, I'd say it was more, and the two of us had at the same time, it was more like a wow kind of, what is this feeling we're having?
I've never seen a red squirrel.
They're very beautiful. Well, we have a problem with you American gray squirrels in Ireland. Somebody back 100 years ago introduced American squirrels, and they almost made our beautiful red squirrels extinct
Mm.
until the pine martens, which is a native kind of predator,
Burden, yeah.
yeah, it started eating them. So the American gray squirrel is being exterminated in Ireland by one of our local predators who got a taste for it. The red squirrels.
They're good against mosquitoes too. They hunt all the mosquitoes.
Yeah,
The martins.
There's what where my family's from in Georgia, there are lots of red squirrels. But
really.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
beautiful. I love them. Also
That's
up in Iowa.
the Appalachians there is teeming with remarkable wildlife.
Oh yeah.
I used
Oh
to go camp.
man.
I used to go camp when I lived in America. I used to go camping up in upstate New York, up around Lake George and that area of upstate New York, and the what's
Finger
called a Finger
Lakes.
Lakes
Yep.
district. Fantastic. I mean, just
It's
to
gorgeous.
see, yeah, and amazing colored snakes. See them on the side of the road, or one night we nearly got eaten by a bear in a tent, but it was funny, kind of thing.
Yes.
But they're American bears. They're harmless.
Yeah, unless they're grizzlies.
Right.
They're scary.
It was our own fault. We cooked a load of fish, but then we got too drunk to eat it, and left it in the frying pan. And
Oh yes, that's a
That's a no-no.
that is a big no. What was your household very religious when you were young?
No, thank God. I know that sounds ironic, but if I can say one thing from my parents that they told me from an early age that don't bother with that nonsense. I can even remember my old man saying they're all a bunch of kiddie fiddlers and stuff like that. So even at an early age, and I can even I have to say that if I can say one good thing about my parents in terms of anything, it was that we were not religious in any way, not at all. Now I was raised Catholic, and I made my confirmation and my first Holy Communion, but that was really just going through the motions. It wasn't because anyone believed it. But no, luckily, I wasn't raised in anything like that. So it was from a very early age. I was not indoctrinated.
That's a gift from parents for sure. Same here. That's I think it's a higher way to raise your kid.
Yeah, no, I just think they just didn't care. I think I thought maybe they had a bad experience or something, but they never forced me or anything. There was none of that stuff. Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's still a gift, whether it was conscious or not. What did you have what was your dream life like as a young lad?
When you mean dreams, you mean my dreaming life or my ambitions, my hopes?
Your dreaming life, your actual go to sleep and go to that realm.
Yeah, absolutely psychedelic. Like you would not believe. I mean, intensely I still am a ferocious dreamer to these days, and taking a painting was a huge way of me getting that out. My dreams. I mean, when I first took LSD, it was like, what's the big deal? I dream like this all the time. So it was but then I had really good LSD, and I felt the difference. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of my dreams were. I never had nightmares and stuff growing up, but I do remember I do remember dreams that were almost almost very beautiful. My dreams. There was always a sense of love and a sensation of compassion and empathy in them. I always felt very kind of protected in my dreams. I didn't have a lot of nightmares growing up. I don't think. No. I say my dreams are actually quite, very vivid, constant, and technicolor and pleasant. I don't have any. I don't have any recollection. I started having the most ferocious nightmares of my life after I became well known, and that's kind of an interesting thing. After Puzzling People became a bestseller, that's when I really started having nightmares that were. I mean, they were horrific, which is interesting in itself, isn't it? When you think about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Would you equate those with psychic attacks?
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And non-entity attacks, entities operating on behalf of sort of like mindless creatures, mindless beings operating on behalf of people who are like jealous or hateful or resentful, or whatever. Absolutely, 100%, no doubt about it.
Physical 3D creatures, or tulpas kind of.
A mixture of both.
Okay.
I think I told this story to someone recently at an event or something. I think it was in Ireland or somewhere. That talk I was doing. or something. But anyway, in September 30th, sorry, 29th, 2012, I had the most horrific night paralysis, horrific dream thing of my life. It was real. And this being that had one eye on extended on a stick, making electrical signals for noises, and one hand outward reached towards me that looked like a kind of a cross. The Daleks from Doctor Who. Imagine one of them with a sheet over it. That kind of look, making these mechanical noises and literally taking the energy out of my body. And even talking about it now, it was a difficult thing to talk about. Uh, Now I keep diaries and journals, so I always write down my dreams. And so I call this thing the electrical night chester because that's what it felt like. It was an electrical entity. Now in demonology, and I've had a couple of experiences like that. There's always talk about them having an electrical or clockwork kind of aspect to their audio impression. But yeah, that was ferocious. And at the time, yeah, I was being attacked by a particularly dangerous and psychotic cult in France that are quite, I'm not going to name or anything because people are working on this behind the scenes. But yeah, these people were dark and dangerous and psychotic and demented, and they wanted me dead. And I don't think they subconsciously sent this entity because they don't have that kind of power. But I think they're basically my wall was weaker, and so something could jump in. And yeah, so yeah,
This was 2012.
yeah, September 29th, 2019. Sorry, 2012. Yeah.
That electrical digital aspect has been reported with entity abductions or alien abductions, or whatever you want to call it, as well.
Yeah, and owls. Do you remember that movie, the Strange Owl Phenomena? Do you remember that movie, The Clash of the Titans?
Yeah.
There was like a clockwork,
Yes.
a wonderful film from the early 80s.
Oh, I love it so much.
There was a clockwork owl in it. People have had these weird owl experiences where a giant owl was on a street one day looking at them. They've reported these electromechanical buzzings and clickings, like an old relay, like an old electromechanical relay in an old telephone exchange, coupled with radio static.
In an owl shape. Great.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I don't know what I would do about that.
Yeah, I had another experience like that when I was younger. I had a few very strange experiences, but one was I was 1982. I was lying face down in my bed one beautiful summer's morning. I was about 17 or 16, and an earthquake had happened that morning in Dublin, and I was suddenly thrown up in the air on the bed, and it sounded like a metal hammer or a steel hammer had landed on a concrete floor. That was the kind of aftershock. And I woke up and said, "What the hell was that?" So I thought it was a plane crashed or something outside. I looked around me, behind me, and there in the corner of the room was a monkey. It sounds weird, but it looked like a monkey. It looked like a little ape kind of creature. And it was looking around trying to find me or find something. And it suddenly made eye contact with me. And when it made eye contact with me, it was like a homing device. It leaped across the room screaming and jumped on my back and beat the crap out of me. And I fainted. When I woke up later on, I had bruises on my back. Was that psychosomatic? Was that some kind of entity attack? Did the earthquake have a part in it? Most certainly. But I don't know. But I've had other experiences like that. Like I had friends who did something really stupid back in the 1970s. We were actually practicing magic quite early. And they summoned Paimon the demon and for a laugh. And they were all like out of their heads and sniffing glue. And the room lit up a completely blue color, and they all ran out screaming. But they all said the same thing, that it sounded like they were inside a giant AM radio that was tuning to look for a signal. They could hear all these weird clicking and radio noises all over the place. So now, I wasn't there, but that comes up over and over again. This kind of weird electrostatic sound.
Yeah. I've even heard it from other magicians during other operations, so they've had that kind of.
Remarkable. It's something that doesn't get enough attention.
I know. It's kind of hard to define it, and it's kind of hard to describe it if you've never experienced it. Not that I have. I'm just saying it's not something to really, you could explore it, but it'd be difficult.
Yeah, I think also because it was first noticed in sort of like the Victorian era before radio transmission.
Mm.
And they didn't really have the vernacular or the language to frame it as like, oh, it sounds like, or a frequency. It didn't exist. So they just probably said strange cacophonies or used as kind of like sort of flowery language.
Mhm. That's also kind of the feeling people get when they transition into when their astral body separates from their physical body. Some people report that same kind of static or white noise, vibration sounds.
Yeah, it just goes to show you, like the whole idea of us being electromechanical beings in an electromechanical reality is far more profound than we sort of like, are nervous. I mean, Jack Parsons said like the epicenter of magic is the nervous system, and it's true.
I thought it was the endocrine system.
Endocrine, well, yeah, that maybe,
It's both.
maybe.
No, that's just I'm not correcting your quote. I just always thought it was endocrine.
Yeah, well, it could be lots of things. It's
Yeah.
also the quantum thing as well. I think it's multi-phase and multi. If you look at like an electronic circuit board, you have everything in there from crystals to induction to digital. So why would we be the same?
And then you've got layers and layers of circuits on one board.
Yeah, why would we be the same?
Mm-hmm. Because that's digital copy of reality. So of course, we're the organic version of that. Anyway, sorry.
No.
It's nice to see the electrical stuff coming into full view now, though. I think a lot of people have been honing in on it for a long time, and so much of it has been skirted aside. So as we've gotten deeper into some of the sciences, saying there's something here, in conjunction with all these experiences magicians and other people, whatever you want to call them, dreamers are having, it's painting a larger picture.
Yeah. It's always been there. If you look at sigils and seals, they look just like electrical circuit diagrams.
Yes.
I mean, I studied electronic engineering, and that was what I originally studied before I dropped out. And I mean, I loved electronics, but I hated college. I'm very unhappy in college studying. I didn't like the social scene or anything. And I can quite remember the first thing, the opening up the books on on building circuits and designing circuits, and there were all sigils in front of me. I remember very clearly that came. I'm working on a kind of a. You're getting a world exclusive here. I'm working on some electronic sigils using circuit boards, which I will be making videos of soon, and I've been playing around with them. And stay tuned. I will be making little videos on them, but I'm fascinated by the idea, and there seems to be quite powerful results. It's almost like giving the sigil an amplifier in the same way that you give your voice a microphone.
I tried something similar to that. I've been doing it for the last couple of years, where I will make a sigil and I will engrave it on something and then put it on next to my router, my Wi-Fi router.
Very good.
With the intention that the Wi-Fi will broadcast the sigil intention on.
Yeah, there's loads of things you can do like that. I mean, I have a friend back in Dublin who put one. Wait to hear this story. He was doing the sound engineering for a big political rally, and he got the sigil and he put it on the speaker diaphragm on all the big speakers that were blasting out the sound, the big master units, and he made it in black tape on all of them. And guess what? He won the lotto a year later.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I love all this stuff pushing magic forward into the modern age. We, starting with like chaos magic that everyone was so opposed to, and then now it's ubiquitous.
Well, that was classic chaos. What he did, that was classic chaos.
Yeah. But then now what you're doing with the digitizing sigils is brilliant.
I'm still using analog. I haven't gone digital. It's going to be an analog circuit.
Okay. Excellent. I can't wait for those videos and all that. What's your experience with lucidity? Like, when were you able in dreams where did it start where you were able to find a high degree of lucidity where you had control of what was going on in the dream time?
I don't think I ever had. I have to be honest about that.
Still to this day?
Well, now, I think I'm very much passive, and I'm very much passive within the dream world. I've not really explored that aspect of. It's funny. People talk to me about that. They say, "Oh, well, why do you do this?" And I says, "Well, I kind of like sit back and watch the show." I think I'm rather lazy in the actual dream world. I think that's what I am. It's almost like I sit back and say, entertain me, motherfuckers," and that's like my attitude.
That's excellent. And yet you still have these amazing, high chroma, psychedelic type dreams going on from what you were saying that started when you were quite young.
Yeah, well, I was also taking magic mushrooms and stuff like that at a very early age. In fact, I went kind of crazy on them the last few weeks, for the first time in years and years. Because the last time, I think it was 6, 7 years ago, the last time I took a load of magic mushrooms, I got really, really violently ill, like toxic thing.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
that- they put me off them for a while, but this year they were amazing. They didn't affect me in any way physically, and it was just beautiful, just beautiful, loving sensations of tripping. We had a very, very hot summer here in Ireland this year, and whatever it did to the mushrooms, my God, it turbocharged them. But they were outstanding this year. There was no toxic problems or anything. But yeah, I was doing that at an early age. I mean, like, we used to have a lot of. We were kind of like we had, growing up where we did, we had a lot of fun as kids. I can remember there was a big heroin problem when I was about 13, 14, 15. And there was a competition we had in school to design a poster, an anti drugs poster, and the prize was £50, which was like really good money back. And my poster won. It was a junkie inside a prison, and the prison bars were made out of syringes. It was
Oh,
pretty
wow.
cool.
Wow.
And I was and they had like the police commissioner on the stage that day gave me the first prize, and he said, "Oh, it's great that we have young lads like you who stand up against the scourge of drugs." Then we took the £50 and went out and bought LSD.
That's excellent irony.
But that was spiritual. That was spiritual. It wasn't drugs.
You're the first person we've interviewed that's had a psychedelic experience that spanned over 30 years, or possibly under.
Well, I have jumped away for like 8 or 9 years at a time. It hasn't been constant.
Sure, I get that, but you've got the span there. My question was more: were there any differences in the realms that you traveled to during the trip now than when you first did it?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say I've never ever had a bad trip. I will give you the similarities. I've seen these gray alien things all my life. Since I was about 15 on, I've seen these whatever those gray alien things are, up until 2 weeks ago, I see them, whatever they are. And
up until 2 weeks ago?
Explain that.
Well, I stopped. That was when I had no mushrooms left. They were all gone.
Okay.
See, I'm a firm believer in seasonal.
Yep.
And indigenous. So you won't find me down in a yurt in the Amazon taking ayahuasca. I'm Celtic, I'm Northern European, and we have our own entheogens and teaching plants
and your own spirits that.
Yeah, and that's it. Now I'll tell you. Now that you said that, very early on, it was kind of like very parochial. The archetypes that came through were ravens and very Celtic and Irish and that kind of thing. I mean, I used to see ravens in them, like multicolored ravens and multicolored butterflies and kind of Celtic art kind of vibe in them. Well, I would say from my late 30s on, and this is really interesting, I see more and more Hindu type archetypes. Hindu
I've heard
gods.
that from other people too. Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing, and then the eyes, these, it's very when you're tripping, it's very difficult to recall it afterwards. You can write down. It's like your mind can't comprehend what you see, but you do remember aspects of it. And the thing that always stands out to me is like I'm turning into a Hindu. I don't know if it's all the curries I've eaten, but I'm turning into. It's all my trips became increasingly Vedic as I aged, which is I can't explain that one, but it's fascinating. We had these Hindu kind of vibes, these Hindu kind of gods.
Yeah, it seems like they're almost a single point in the tree of origin of these archetypes. They're somewhere, everything arced off of them.
We could be going back in time. We could
That
be,
too.
those of us of like Indo-European. And remember, like we are. Our ancestors did come from the steppes. One half of the family went into Europe. The other half of the family went into the Hindu Kush in India.
Hmm.
So that's our heritage too. So it might be a kind of like a widening or a spreading out of the archetypes.
Mm. Or maybe you've just
Yeah.
we as a culture or collective have accessed deeper layers in our DNA memories or
And
our
I think and
ancestry.
I, and I think you mature as you get older as well. I think you absorb new, like your life experiences pour into them as well. The kind of music you listen to, even foods, like things you wouldn't eat. You wouldn't eat things like poppadoms when you were a little kid in Ireland, but now you do. Are things from the Asian world. I think all these things, you become a kind of a painting of a sort,
Mm.
and then all the archetypes. It's almost like you're now receptive to them.
It's interesting. Just from food. You
Or
know,
anything, listening to
and
Bollywood, watching Bollywood movies. You do knows, God knows, listening to Ravi Shankar or Hula Shaker albums. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, I meant more the culture, but I was just thinking, wow, if you could just
Yeah,
just from food alone, that's going to expand
yeah,
your
yeah.
awareness of that culture. So
I
yeah.
saw an interview years ago, Robert Smith from The Cure, and it was a Japanese lady interviewing him, and she said, The Cure to us in Japan, you sound very Eastern. And did that come from listening to music? And he said something like, no, it's probably come from like going to curry houses. So, it's not the first time someone said it.
Right.
It's interesting that you bring this up right now, though, because in the last month I've talked to several people that are, and this is my, I've brought it up, so it's come out of me mentioning it, that I'm noticing. I've always been attracted to the Hindi stuff, and have a lot of that stuff in my workings just naturally. But I've all of a sudden I'm hearing about people, longtime magicians, talking about these deities showing up in their dreams or showing up in active imaginations, and it's just making me curious. Why am I just honing in on it? Is there, how we preset our ideas, and then the world fills in around them? So I see and I'm hearing more people talk about this, but you are yet another person saying this. So there's, I don't know, there's something there. It's so old, the culture, and these gods are very, very old and complex.
And they're also so similar to ours as well. Like the Kali is the Valkyrie, the Morrigan.
Yes, yes.
Indra is Thor, Gunnar. It just goes on and on. I mean, the archetypal similarities are particularly powerful. We also could be dealing with a kind of a widening of the archetypal experience as human beings as well. We could be dealing with that, and we're actually broadening out. But it is interesting. I don't, I think I know this is going to sound kind of controversial, but I do think you're kind of racially trapped into it in many ways. I don't know whether that comes in the blood or the DNA or in the nervous system or whatever. But I mean, I can go to Native Americans and really enjoy that stuff and really get a vibe from it, or Aborigines or whatever. But I don't relate to it in the same way I do things from the Indian subcontinent. In the same way I relate to European archetypes, and that's not chauvinism or anything. I'm not saying it's better or anything like that. It's just like the same reason I wouldn't go for ayahuasca in South America. I just feel connected. I can't. I can't. I can only relate to what I feel I can relate to, and I can't be Mister New Age. All is one. For me, it's like I'm very much. Maybe I'm kind of like a spiritual redneck or something, but I'm very much trapped within the Celtic, Nordic, European, Indo-European, and the Vedic thing. I can't get out of it. I'm very much trapped in it. I don't know why that is. I would like to know what it likes to feel like to be a Navajo shaman or a Toltec or an Aborigine Australian, but it's just not going to happen.
It's one of the things that puts me off when in a lot of spiritual conversations and communities where they're all of a sudden, that, I don't know, this is probably going to sound terrible, but always like, well, I'd find myself at festivals and there'd always be like the white Indians. I'm talking American Indians. They would be clearly like of Scandinavian descent, and burning sage, all this. And I understand the desire and all that, but it always just seemed like a bad meme. And on another point you're making, as the world's becoming more globalized, as we're becoming more educated in general about other cultures because of the internet, because of food and all the and exposure to other cultures through basically the internet, I think it's definitely got to be changing the way our collective unconscious is functioning. There's a sea change in the ocean, in the sea. There's a change happening, and we're seeing it on an archetypal level. So it's under the surface and it's deep down in there. I'm wondering about some of the experiences people are having with sleep paralysis with these new, as I've been recording, new imagery that's new to me, having studied dreams a very long time. And with that said, what are your experiences with sleep paralysis?
I've never had it. I'm not the way now. It's funny because it runs in my family. The women seem to get it, which is a weird one, isn't it? And I have an aunt who was driven mad by night hag attacks for years,
Oh,
even when I
oh,
was a kid. No, it's never happened to me. Now that thing I told you earlier on that I was actually not sleep paralysis. That was like that was like a being. It was like an entity. That's not what people I wasn't frozen. I was able to move and everything like that. Sleep paralysis is a very disturbing thing. When you meet someone whose lives has been destroyed by it, and I have, and it's definitely real. And I don't know what. Don't ask me what it causes it or anything like that, but it's absolutely real. But that's no, you just said something kind of interesting. Then before you said that, you mentioned that these like redheaded women who call themselves Navajo shaman and all this stuff. I've met this in Ireland. I met a girl last this summer. Talking to her, she told me she was a Navajo shaman, and I burst out laughing.
oh dear.
She did a course somewhere, this kind of nonsense. And and there's they have these. I mean, it's gone awful in Ireland at the moment. Basically, cultural Marxists and all these kind of like annoying lefties have taken over the kind of pagan scene here. So expect to see Brazilians. And I'm not saying nothing wrong with these people. I mean, good for them. But you'd have like Beltane festivals here where you'll have like Afro Caribbean dancers and stuff, and it's all because they get grant money from the government as all part of these diversity programs. What they're really doing is watering down and making it all people's spirituality mush at theirs and ours by turning it into some kind of new age, I don't know, pick and mix bullshit. And
Yeah, yeah.
there's no sincerity to it. There's no reality to it. There's no spiritual depth to it. I can, like when I lived in America, I used to meet Irish Americans all the time, and they used to say things to me like, "Yeah, well, I don't have any background, like anything like what the fuck are you talking about?" And then I would like tell them all about like the Irish mythological cycle, and it's just you have an incredibly complex and rich ancient spiritual tradition that predates Christianity, goes back thousands and thousands of years, and it's all there. It's not even a myth. It's there and it's fully accessible. And they didn't know about these things. They just thought like, oh, you're Irish American, you're a Catholic or a Protestant. That's the end of it. They didn't know about these. Not their fault. They just didn't know. But here they were flying down to like Peru to get raped in a tent by some guy like who was like pumped and full of drugs. I'm joking aside, that does happen, and
Yes.
unfortunately, and I think there's a lot of spiritual mush, a lot of spiritual mush out there, a lot of, look at it this way. In every other aspect of life, we tend to focus, right? Suppose you're interested in, I don't know, trains. You might be interested in steam trains. If you're interested in aircraft, you might be interested specifically in a type of aircraft, biplanes or something like that. I think I think you can do your best work if you concentrate on a specific path rather than that's true and one you have a genuine affection and connection to. And I think the spiritual world works the same way as well. I mean, I know people, God love them, who have jumped from everything. I mean, they go to places like Sedona in America or Glastonbury, in England, to every bloody workshop they can find. And one week it's Tibetan, the next week it's Vedic, the next week it's Celtic, the next week it's Nordic, and the next week it's Buddhist. I don't know where they're coming or going, and it's not helping them to grow as a spiritual person. It's actually doing the opposite effect. I think there's a. I think. Okay, what you can apply to chaos magic, I don't, in terms of like grabbing what's available and and working with what's of this kind of like impulsive gnosis of I don't think that works as spirituality. I don't know why. I don't think it does. I don't think you can go to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem and do a kind of like a Santeria thing. I just, for some reason, it doesn't work. Spirituality seems to be very specific. I don't mean that in a sectarian way, that you shouldn't try our things and they shouldn't try ours. I just think that like it's almost like they want us to maintain our archetypes in as pure as possible. I see that in folk magic. You see, in folk magic, it's very, very specific. And I think that's where a lot of spirituality is like. I think you have to nail it into that. I don't think we have a kind of a chaos spirituality yet. We have a chaos magic, but we don't have a chaos spirituality.
There aren't really many. I'm sorry. There aren't any.
No, carry on, Jimmy.
There aren't really any archetypes associated with chaos magic that we could, manifest in that space.
Archetypes of chaos.
Yeah.
Well, there's pop culture. I mean, you can use. I mean, you
okay,
can
yeah,
use,
Superman, Batman.
Yeah, yeah, and you can use things like, I mean, I know people have done things like the Mothman, and even UFOs, and even like, I mean, David Bowie was kind of popular for a long time there with them, and quite rightly. Yeah, I think we can use that. There's no harm in that. I think that's the beauty of it. But also, if you do look, I mean, a lot of people I know who work with chaos too, they're also kind of like interested in Nordic and Celtic stuff as well, in a kind of a rock and roll way. It's kind of hard to explain. You know what I'm saying?
It.
Not in a kind of a purist way, in a kind of a rock and roll way. But yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, my attitude is like I invent my. I'm not fully in the world of chaos, and I'm definitely not in the world of ceremonial. But having said that, without mentioning them here, I've invented my own archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
I've given them names and I've created them as kind of like compensatory gods that I can work with as sort of like mechanistic ideas in certain aspects of my magical workings and my spiritual development. So that's a great thing as well. That's a great thing too.
That's kind of what I was getting at. There's no, I mean, there are chaotic things that you can use, but there are no specific things for people. There's no palette of demons to choose from like there is, say, with the Goetia.
Yeah, and some people love that. Some people need, they can't sit down by the piano and find the notes. They have to have the musical score and the training. Right. And that's okay. That's just where they are. That's cool.
Yeah, totally.
But that's cool. But does ceremonial magic still work? I don't know. I've got like, I don't know if it still works to the level it did in the same way. I think it's like an onion. It's in the middle of an onion, and the new layers have appeared on top of that. Pop culture has put a whole new layer on it. That's more like a standing on the shoulder of giants kind of thing, rather than, when people who do like Victorian ceremonial stuff today, is it really working? I mean, is it? I don't know. But is it can be incorporated into something? Yeah, it can. I mean, gnosis is gnosis at the end of the day.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. I'd be interested if you could set up some kind of like a reality show where you could have a bunch of ceremonial musicians say like, and I'm not putting down the Golden Dawn, don't get upset at me again, and say a bunch of Wiccans or a bunch of chaos magicians, and then have them quantify their success after 6 months. I would like to see that, just for my own thing.
Don't you think the observance of it would alter the outcome?
Absolutely, but it'd be kind of fun too as well. It would be kind. I mean, the Big Brother TV show that had so much potential for that stuff. From day one, I noticed it, but unfortunately, it got a bit. They filled it full of celebrities and stuff. But I remember watching the Big Brother show in England, and I was saying, God, this is absolutely prime for this kind of chaos stuff. And I remember like thinking at the time I didn't know anybody. We should be trying to affect certain characters in the Big Brother house and stuff.
Yes,
I mean, I'm sure some people did it. But that was a fantastic missed opportunity, I think.
Hmm. Interesting ideas.
You said something earlier that I don't want to get too far away from, and that was dealing with entities in your dream time. Could you give us more information, maybe some experiences on how that plays out for you and what possibly you've encountered?
Generally, I have very female, very feminine experiences in that world. I'm talking about the whole gauntlet of kind of like scary, kind of Morrigan, Callie type female entities, all the way down to loving, nurturing, mothering. In between that, sexually feral ones, romantically kind of ones. That's been very, very powerful all my life. Now, in terms of I could never say it looked like this, or it was like this, or it was this kind of entity or being, but definitely a strong feminine thing has always been present in my sort of spiritual realms in the dream time, and even even when I'm tripping, it's like that. I've always had that kind of like, the mushroom has always appeared as a woman. It's always manifested as a woman. Uh, uh, I Like I said, it was the weirdest thing. I never really had bad experiences until I became known. It's the funny. I can't explain it. I think what Jerry said is bang on. They were psychic attacks. That's what manifested that. But I'll tell you something else. I've had strong Lovecraftian experiences. Yeah, I know. I saw that. I've had strong Lovecraftian experiences. My new book, Sorcery: The Invocation of Strangeness. I taught, a lot of people say to me, "You're always talking about Lovecraft," and I say because the guy's important. This is important stuff. I mean, we're
Very.
basic. He is basically the guts of Western society with the skin torn off, and a lot of people don't seem to understand how the profundity of this man's legacy. He was probably, I would say, at this stage in history of development of magic, he was probably more important than Crowley at this point. Now, I, like the subconscious mind, the ocean, the depths, the Lovecraftian idea. And there's one story or account in the book. I was living in Dublin in 2001 ish, 2002 ish, and I had this dream of that human consciousness had developed at the bottom of the ocean. A very beautiful and powerful dream. And I woke up in bed and saying, "James, that was great. That was really, that was one of those dreams. I'm really glad I had it. The idea that human consciousness developed in the ocean." Computer's frozen. Am I
No,
back? I
you're
froze
not.
there for a bit.
No, you weren't frozen. We were listening. I thought you had more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I,
the
I, I,
ocean thing.
I thought the screen freeze. Yeah. So no, and so I was very happy, very happy. I get up and it's exactly 3:33 a.m. on my clock, which is kind of interesting anyway. And I looked over, and the flat that I was renting was on Dublin Bay, and I looked over the Irish Sea, and a sliver of a crescent moon was rising above the sea, and it was almost like, oh, this is meant to happen at this point. The idea was that the dream basically said that the human consciousness, in order for it to get to the surface of the earth, had to dream the moon into existence. Now, this is all very Lovecraftian, very, like the gibbous moon and all this kind of thing. And so, yeah, and since I was been a teenager, yeah, I've been a Lovecraft nerd, a geek, and I still am, and always will be, and that will never change. And I have to say that his writing has been extremely deep in my development as a human being. Even now, uh, that's that's there. That I don't know what part of the sort of magical consciousness realms he inhabits, but my God, it's enormous. It's absolutely gigantic, and it's growing every year. I mean, in many ways, they say like, and it's true that Crowley invented the 20th century. I think Lovecraft has actually invented the 21st century. I think there's a lot to that. A lot of the things that he was, you know, look, he played the whole thing. I'm an atheist. There's no magical world. I'm a blah, Mr. Science, Mr. Reductionist. But look, he was obviously lying to himself. He was a passive, at the very least, he was a passive shaman. at the very least, passive.
Well, it could have been also the time frame he was set in. You know how Jung
Yeah.
had to denounce anything, that seemed woo at the time, so he wouldn't lose credibility within the scientific community. So, I mean, it's hard to. We can't take these characters out of their context to the time period they were existing in.
Yeah, I just want to know what it is about New England that produces this kind of thing because, we had him, Edgar Allan Poe, and then we had Stephen King, and then like New England's a very fascinating place anyway for this. Like, it was at this gestation of like the European first encountering the Native American on this new land that caused this. I mean, there's huge. I mean, was Lovecraft the first transmigratory emigrant shaman? Like a lot of his work, he writes like an old world Englishman. A lot of his stuff is definitely like if you look at the story like the Moonbog about it shows tremendous knowledge of Irish mythology. For someone in America at that time, quite staggering, quite knowledge. And that was a story he wrote as a competition for a St. Patrick's Day story or something. It was like a competition he wrote. And uh, was the purpose of Lovecraft to take the European pagan tradition and transport it to North America? And I think there's quite a possibility that he's almost like a transmigratory shaman in both his terms of his art and his personality, where he brought almost like the old world pagan sensation world inclination and brought it to the Americas. The more I think about that, the more I think it's plausible.
In your dreams, have you encountered? Do you get a lot of the Lovecraftian, like the water stuff, the old ones?
Oh, very much so, and I'm very much, and even like I told you at the beginning of the story, the lake in the middle of the wood, the lake on the island in the middle of the woods. I've always been as young as I can remember staring into that deep water, whether it was the ocean or whether it's the lake or whether it was the pool. That whole thing of close your eyes and see, as James Joyce put it. I've there's been there's this. I know that we are down there. I know that when when I was a kid visiting we used to take the ferry across the Irish Sea to see my aunt in Liverpool, and in the middle of the Irish Sea, I used to look off the ship and look down the water, and I knew there was something about us that was down there. And I think
Yeah. Yes.
Lovecraft and Young beautifully brought that into focus.
Yes, I think, and I think anyone really in tune with all this has that same deep sense.
Mm.
So, do you have any specific dream imagery of things living down there that have come through, say, through your dreams?
No, but I'll tell you what does happen. I do have when I first started reading stories, Lovecraft stories, and the descriptions of the monsters in them. It was almost like my subconscious recognized them, even though I had never remember seeing them. I
Yes.
remember in
Yep.
the TV series Doctor Who in the 70s, they had a thing called the Sea Devils, and they're very much kind of a Lovecraftian. They're very similar to the kind of marsh mutations in The Shadow over Innsmouth, the Lovecraft story. They're kind of like
Which I
and I
love.
yeah, if some of your listeners want to check that out, go look on old Doctor Who episodes of the Sea Devils from the 1970s, and the Lovecraftian thing just comes screaming through. Again, like these kind of humanoid, fishy people. It's almost like not in the dream themselves, but when you start reading about them and when you start imagining them, they come across as familiar.
Also, I want to ground this a bit in your relationship with earth in the natural world. So and you talk about, you're always talking about this in your videos, but for people that haven't encountered you, how do you view the earth right now? What is it? Is it sentient? What is it when you close your eyes or when you just instinctually think about nature and the earth?
Well, the whole universe is alive. That's how I feel it. I feel all the planets are living beings. The Earth is a living being. Even the Moon is a living being. They're, I mean, I got a lot of that from megaliths, and a lot of those stones are alive. I can't explain it, but they are. They're alive with memory and they're alive with experience, maybe held in the quartz or the mica seams within these stones. The earth is a living being. The Gaia hypostasis, I agree with. Yeah, it's absolutely alive, and it's our mother. And this is one of these things that upsets me very much with this flat Earth nonsense. Is that this is almost like a denial of reality, a corruption and a violation, if not a blasphemy of the pagan idea. And I mean, and a lot of these people are born again Christian whack jobs, but the idea is like to deny that the earth is a globe is to basically it's basically to violate your mother or something like that.
It's
It's
also says it's calling it profane
it's
because
absolutely
it's a square. You're saying it's a square, it's flat, which is profane, versus sphere, which is divine. So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, and also, it's the whole thing. There's a vulgarity there. These guys, I think, a lot of these people who are following this kind of philosophy, they're actually going to have tremendous. It's already happened. Tremendous psychic damage eventually. It's basically raging against reality, raging against you know basic truths. And I'm not talking about like the heliosphere or anything like that. I'm talking about spiritual truths. And these guys can be very nasty. They've been very nasty to me, and it's like I'm seeing the worst elements of Christianity manifest within these kind of guys. And sorry, lads, but you're definitely 100% on the wrong path in every way, and you should be trying to jump out before it absolutely destroys you. And I'm sure many of you already been destroyed.
Yeah, there's a large core of evangelicals and Christians in that group.
Yeah, frighteningly so.
Frighteningly so, yes.
What, and also, so in tune with all of this, what are your ideas, Thomas, on the difference between states of consciousness, say from dreams to here to psychedelic experiences to meditation? Maybe what is the thread that's connecting all of this to the nowness we experience?
I don't know if any of it's real. I know that sounds strange, but I
Not at
don't
all.
know. I
Not at
don't know
all.
if
I
I'm
just
even.
made a video on that.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'm the dream or the dream is the real world or if the dream is another reality. I think it's a combination of all these things. I think basically uh, we dream reality into existence, into manifestation. I think there's a big truth to that. We dream out loud. We dream out loud. And I think there's an awful lot of truth to that. I mean, if you look at a lot of the ancient pagan and even Aborigine traditions, African, they always talk about the idea that the universe is built from a dream. It's dreamed into reality. And so, I mean, am I awake right now? Am I asleep? Am I a vision? Do I even exist? Am I somebody else's neuroses? I don't know. That's part of the fun. That's part of the magic of it. I think that uh, for a long time now, I've subscribed to the idea of the Vedic idea that we're basically all a trillion eyes of a god, and we're all like a kind of like a synapse on this one large entity, and we're an individual synapse or whatever on this one large kind of god brain, and we're actually actively manufacturing or resolving, which is a better term, the universe going forward. I think that's it. The difference between dreams. I mean, dreams, like, why do we even dream? It makes no sense. Is it stopping for our neural pathways from shutting down? I don't know. I think there's lots of ways the brain could solve that problem. I think yeah. I think definitely dreams, different states of consciousness. Yeah, we know the subconscious, the conscious mind, the dream states, and all these astral realms, and all these kind of ideas. I think ultimately they're all feedback loops, all wired into each other. And I think it's like the circuit board analogy that Jerry made at the beginning. It's multi-phase, and but to create a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, one of the earliest images I had, and I didn't realize it was Vedic at the time I was young, was that whole thousand eyes, million eyes, that concept. And it's still deeply in me. It's not attached to Vedic anything. It's just natural and pure on its own. It's something I somehow honed in on. Um, so with this, I want to get into maybe a little bit of like apparitions and ghosts of the dead that you know, and what your take is on that. Have you had experiences with them in dreams, in waking life, and what what do you think is going on there?
I'm really enjoying this. You're asking me questions no one else asked me. Uh, Ghosts. How do I feel about ghosts? I don't know if ghosts exist. I mean, yeah, well, people see them and they experience them. I think there are a lot of. I mean, from my experience, I think there were a lot of. I think they're demons. Really, I think a lot of them are. I think. I mean, I was in Texas there last year, and there was some event. There was some famous ghost hunters from TV there, and they nearly died when I told them. Well, I don't. I think they're like demons you're encountering inside the hospitals and the prisons. And I said, "What do you mean the demons? But they're patients. They were ex-patients. They're ex-prisoners." And I says, "No, they're all dead and gone. They're humans." I says, "Why would a human want to remain in a place like that?" I said, "If you look at demonology going back to the Babylonian, right back, they all say the same thing. They like to hide away from humans in old buildings, graveyards, caves, old mines, old woods, and that's the same with the fairy thing. I think the fairy thing and the demon thing is indistinguishable. I think it's the same experience, it's just a different name for it, and the aliens as well. And I think have I ever seen a ghost? I don't think I've. I don't think I've. No, I'm not. I don't think I have actually seen what I could say a classic ghost. I've had weird experiences in places and all buildings and stuff like that, and but I definitely think there were entities. Now, right near here is a place. I'm actually working on a documentary, funny enough, on this about the haunted Ireland kind of idea. There's a large house, and it's got a great story connected to it. It's a beautiful country estate manor house, very large one called Lishean on the beach. It's very beautiful in this part of Ireland, and and about 100 years ago, the lord of the manor's son took an interest in Egyptology, as was all the rage back then in the 1910s and 1920s. Tutankhamun, everyone was going to Egypt. They were all crazy for Egyptology, and he brought back a lot of stuff from Egypt, including mummies. And he was also involved in some ritual magic thing. And basically, within a couple of weeks, the house started eating itself and started going bonkers. And this beautiful house had to be abandoned. The staff wouldn't work there. No one would work there. The family had to vacate it. And today it's just a shell covered in ivy. But I've gone into it, and I'm not kidding you. This is definitely the truth, Nish. I've had rocks and bricks fly off walls to try and hit me, and so there's entities were actually manifested. Now, I have a video and on my Thomas Sheridan Arts channel called "How to Capture a Demon," and that's what I did there. I got this. My friend and I, who's a Satanist, we built, and also another electronics nerd, we built this device to try and capture an entity using a seal inside a jar that was sealed with wax and white lead. Inside it had a very good high quality condenser microphone, and it's completely sealed. And we left it over there for the weekend. Brought it back. You can see the video on my channel, and we captured something. We came to the conclusion it was probably some kind of spiritual wildlife. So we felt kind of bad about it and released it back to where it was. But while we were in there, bricks were flying off the walls and everything. And so, I mean, people say, "Oh, it's ghosts, it's haunted." I actually think it's more like we're dealing with entities. I think a lot of these ghost hunter shows, and some of them, they really do have the real thing does happen. You can see there's no doubt about that. But they go, "Oh, it's the ghost of Lord Effington and his chambermaid, blah blah blah," and
Right.
it's some kind of fairy or demon they're obviously dealing with.
There's no way to verify what the hell it is.
No, no, but it's definitely they love these romantic stories, these Victorian melodramas.
Makes good
Oh, it's
TV.
yeah, Lord, Lady something, she was broken hearted and threw herself off the cliffs and all this nonsense. Yeah,
I like the Old
Oh, that's
West ones
hilarious.
where they jump out the second story window and then get embedded in the mud and die because they can't pull them out.
What? Oh yeah, and there's also like, yeah, I could go off on a tangent there. I wanted to get to this before we get past it too much too, and the idea of the Earth and the planetary spheres and all this being sentient. And this question is about spirit and matter. So um, because I have the same view as you do with all this. And I'm wondering, and this is a ponder, but is there something to maybe the process as we see it even in the tree of life, the Kabbalah, uh, with the ascent and descent of energy into density and um, could we be on that process too? Could say we be on our way to finding heavier density as a stone or something like that? Is are we tied into this process?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I wouldn't say it's as sort of like basic as I don't know what it is. I was reading a few years ago. I read some books on theosophy, and they had some very good ideas about this, which I kind of thought were deserved a lot more merit than they were given. The idea that basically matter hangs off thought, or matter hangs off spirit. So we're hanging off a spiritual thing, right? And so the idea is like that when you're elated, you feel lighter. When you're depressed, you feel heavier. So the more closer you are to a sort of a spiritual state, you're floating almost. And we see that when you die, you float out of your body. When you're having an astral experience, you float out of your body. Where you're depressed and you're down and you're sick, like I've got a cold at the moment, you feel like you're very much stuck in your physical being. So I think that the Theosophists had some really good ideas about that, which they kind of ultimately got from the Gnostics. But the idea that like spirit is like basically uh, a foundation in which matter hangs off. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And we're back to
Yeah.
the dream. We're back to the dreaming thing again, because the matter is then dreamed out loud from the actual spirit.
Yes, definitely. And with that, what do you think is going on with reoccurrence? So reoccurring symbols, and a lot of times people experience that with, say, synchronicities, both in and out of dream time, and with the process of deja vu. How do you think that all ties in here?
I think both of them are related to something quite profound. As the universe is playing games with you. I think if you come on, we've all done it. The more we notice synchronicities, the more profound they become. The more frequently they happen. I haven't had a deja vu in a long time, but that's a biological thing. Generally, you have more than when you're younger. But synchronicities are reference points. They're reference points to your development, to your pathway in life. And I cannot stress to people enough that they must place great value upon them, because synchronicities are one of the few things where you can actually say to somebody, "Look, here's proof that you do have a magical destiny. Here's proof that you are a spiritual existence." Like people, oh, it's just coincidence, but eventually you just if you it, they'll eventually say no, it was more than a coincidence. It was extremely powerful, and I started noticing more and more. Uh, I, I know some people are quite disturbed by synchronicities. I was quite surprised to find this lately. Oh, everywhere I look, I keep seeing the number 44 or something. It's really frightening me. And I says, "Why is it frightening you?" "I don't know." Like it's almost like, well, maybe the lesson with that person is to stop being neurotic about it. I said, "No, you should be paying attention to this, and not but in a neutral way." I always say, like, neutrality is the path is the greatest path of being spiritual. I think the spiritual development is being neutral. But I think, yeah, a lot of people, they don't. So I was quite surprised by that. Recently, I felt like a guy I was talking to, and he was having these synchronicities. He was frightened by them. He was actually scared of them. And I said, "Don't be scared of them. Recognize them, but don't place any great value upon them. Let them manifest and let them evolve into what they become. But down the road, their profound nature will be revealed to you."
So, when you were writing Sorcery, did you have any interesting synchronicities around the book or the topics, or
Yeah, my house split in two.
really?
Yep,
Wow. Could you elaborate on that?
my house physically split in two halves.
Hmm.
The back of the house fell off.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
for no reason. The back walls fell off and the roof was pulled off, and I had to. I mean, I was nearly homeless. Books were flying off, everything. I mean, you name it. I mean, this it was like pipes bursting, electrical failures, sparks appearing in the middle of the air. It was outrageous. And then when people who bought the book were telling me I was 10 pages in and my washing machine, which is brand new, blew up and my dishwasher froze. And I mean, I should have put a disclaimer in the beginning, not responsible for anything that may happen. But oh my God, that book was something else. Let me tell you, it was book number 7, I think, of all the books I've written.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the house snapped in two. That's as clear as anything. Books were flying, paintings were spinning on walls. Uh, yeah. I mean, it was like they all came to have a look. They all came to have a. They all, it's like. I mean, I wrote in the book. I says, look, folks, just the very act of reading this book, things will happen in your house because not. Don't be afraid of it. They're just these entities are just interested. 99 times out of 100, they're harmless and they're just having a look and they'll make their no, their presence known by things like pools of water on the floor and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I mean, Jesus,
If it was pools of cat puke, I would have about 20 entities in my house right now.
there you go,
My cats
I've
just
got,
went crazy.
there you go, well, there you go. I've got cats too, but they seem to handle it better than I did. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. If you're going to go down the magical path, you got to be prepared for this stuff. It's kind of comical. You got to learn to laugh at it. I mean, you've got to learn you can't be. Oh Jesus Christ! The
It'll make it worse.
my entire bookshelf of all my books just jumped off the wall with about 400 books in it and flew across the room. You can't scream right at the door screaming, "Where's the priest? Get the holy water." You have to pick it up and you have to laugh. And that's what happens. The kind of things that are
Right.
happening.
You start
I totally
screaming and
agree.
fearing they're just gonna. It's a smorgasbord.
Yeah.
And plus, we all know that there's something very dispelling about laughter anyway, the vibrational rate of it.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Buddhists have this thing called laughing at demons.
Yes.
And I mean, I learned that. That's one of the reasons I'm always telling jokes and having a laugh.
Yeah, me
Doing
too.
that
Hmm.
for years,
Same
writing
here.
satirical stories. I mean, we were doing this years ago on Usenet. We invented an Air Force army of teddy bears that was going to like end the violence in Northern Ireland, and we were attacking the IRA with teddy bears. And there was IRA guys, and we were like telling them, like, you've been sentenced to death. Or this is actually what's happening. You can see the stuff online. We've sentenced you to death by being bashed by teddy bears. And these guys were laughing. And guess what? The war in Northern Ireland stopped. The IRA put down their guns. I don't have anything to do with it, but we were doing these kinds of things. And then when I see this 4chan stuff and Keck and all this stuff has been going on for years. We just weren't as evolved, or we just weren't as sophisticated about it. But absolutely, humor is the key because that cracks open the matrix. Like, you forget about ayahuasca. If you want to
Hmm.
smash open the matrix, go into like heavy satire. Because what happens is satire. I mean, firstly, satire takes a complex level of awareness. They understand. A lot of people don't get it. Like people in like cults or religious people or political people don't get it. So it's a way of like bashing them without them actually knowing about it. They're like, "What does this mean? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" They don't, they would not. They don't get the very subtle contextual aspects of satire is incredibly powerful because it can literally disarm very dangerous forces because they don't know what. This is why the jester was always the one to survive in the ancient medieval courts when everyone else was dead. This is why you put the Joker back in the deck of the last card. This is. I mean, Jesus Christ. When I think most of my magical practice has probably been satire over the years, big time. I mean, really big time. We used to make fanzine and newsletters. We used to put like weird things, hilarious things up around Dublin. During the elections. We used to put up giant posters saying it. We used to put election posters saying "Vote for my penis" and this kind of thing. And it was just to make people's heads go, just what the hell is this? To smash them out of reality. And here we have this guy nowadays in 2018, Donald Trump, who's basically doing that in the Oval Office and on Twitter.
The supreme
It's like
troll. Yeah.
what a world we have, what a world we've ended up in. What a time to be alive.
On the other hand, we have forget his name. Dank, Captain Dank. I forget his name. The guy in Scotland who was in jail.
Oh, where he got his dog to say Heil Hitler.
Yes.
Yeah, but ultimately that will have a happy ending because
I hope so.
yeah, those things don't, I mean, it's only dogmatic lunatics who actually think that that was justifiable, and they've never been served well by history. History has never been kind to the dogmatics. So, ironically, he has a dog, but no pun there. But yes, I think that those things will have happy endings in the end. The
It
pussycat
seems
does.
like in general right now, satire and humor is really under attack. And it is over here for sure.
That's
Because
because the
it's
Illuminati doesn't want us to have any fun.
well, it's come whatever reason, it's a reality and it's happening and people are taking offense to everything. They've lost their sense of humor. It's considered something, like all this big band of hate speech. And that leads me into this question of what do you think is actually going on, Thomas, with the crazy environment in which we find ourselves in, interesting with all the earth changes and then all this political upheaval around the world, and the way things are shifting. What's your take on it in general?
Yeah, we're having an evolutionary process, and the ones who are kind of switched on and having a laugh and still, can laugh and joke and have satire and things like that, we're the future. The ones who are trying to suppress laughs and jokes and calling it all offensive and saying it's politically incorrect, they're the past, they're the dinosaurs, they're the dodos, they're gone, they're history, and they're basically the Walking Dead, and that's the future. Humanity right now is evolving very, very fast into something new. It hasn't happened since the Enlightenment, of even before at the Renaissance. And we are stepping into a new world, and these people are missing the boat, and that's why they're trying to pull anyone back who's moving ahead. I have tremendous respect for the people behind things like 4chan and all this kind of thing, and I think they're going to be in the future. They'll be looked upon as the engineers of the new Renaissance. They will be looked upon in the same way the philosophers were of the Enlightenment. I think that in the future they will be held in very high esteem for having brought humanity to a better place. Now, they're a lot of times they're acting subconsciously. But history has never been kind to anyone who's offended, and history has been very kind to the mavericks. And this is always remember this: history has always been kind to the mavericks and unkind to the dogmatics. And what we're seeing now is that turbocharged. Turbocharged. Uh, uh, Trump is fulfilling an archetype. I don't care if you like him. I don't care if you hate him. He represents something special. There's something going on there. Pay attention and stop being an idiot and a fool, holding yourself back from some kind of evolutionary, social, or spiritual or cultural development. Pay attention. Uh, you, I mean, yeah. What's happened is the gates have been opened, and there's some of us have run into the forest. We've run away, and we're feral. And the other crowd are going, I demand you come back here into our little prison with us. I demand you come back in here to our conformist world. How dare you? And that's exactly what's happening. And that's what it is, evolution. And it's absolutely fantastic. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. But absolutely loving every second of it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, same. I find it's exhilarating, what we're all collectively experiencing or dreaming or going
Or
through.
manifesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like we are feral beasts, and we're having some. I mean, Jesus! Like I mean, I was told. What was I saying there last week? I was like, out of the blue, one of the guys at work turns around and said, "You know, they say that your man Trump is an arsehole and he's dangerous." And he comes out this out of the blue and he goes, "I kind of like him." And I says, "Why?" It's because he doesn't give a shit. And maybe he doesn't give a shit. And maybe and I've never seen a politician that didn't give a shit except doing what he wanted to do. And then he said later something, and this is a guy I wouldn't classify as a great thinker. He says he's probably the first American president that's a human being. A human being. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
no,
just.
it's
And how do you
probably
mean?
true.
How do you mean a human being? Well, he's. I mean, I feel like I go up and have a talk with him. He doesn't feel like he's acting out some kind of like university's program, and I think that's unprecedented to even get to that far. I mean, I've got a new book coming out. It's a second version of my old book, The Anvil of the Psyche. But I mean, if you even look at Trump's election, Hillary Clinton was winning until we reached 3 o'clock, the witching hour. And
Allegedly, we don't know if the
allegedly,
polls were accurate.
if you look at those, if you look at the counts as they're coming in, they literally flip at 3 a.m.
Hmm.
It's bizarre. It's truly bizarre. It's like the human race on that night flipped. And then you had the Brexit thing in England. I woke up the next morning laughing my head off when Brexit passed. I was like, that came, and that was just basically ordinary people saying, let's vote against it for a laugh. Let's see what happens. And the establishment doesn't get it. The establishment doesn't get that a lot of Americans voted for Trump for a laugh.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Like, let's see what happens. Let's see if we can piss off the Clintons. Let's see if we can piss off, and that's what happened with Brexit as well. And that's the. I mean, a lot of people just did it for. I mean, those 2 mornings, Brexit and Trump elected, I was walking around laughing my head off because the program had failed and had failed in the most comical and funny way. I don't think I've had a day of like the days of like. I mean, I can't understand these people who are terrified. Oh, the world is going to end. The UK is going to go into starvation and war because it's leaving the European Union. America is going to become a dark and evil place. And I'm like, have you paid attention? It's been true freedom. We don't know what's going to happen. That's true freedom.
Right. For once, our future is not programmed.
Yeah, and I love that.
Right. That's the thing for anyone that voted for Trump that was just voting to step away from what the trajectory was. You could see it with the old school stuff. It was more of the same. And so the absurdity of Trump, really brought in that jester feel.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
It's almost like we've got our free will back at some point.
It was a wild card, so it's
Yeah,
like betting against the house in a way.
And to see the likes of Hillary Clinton literally disintegrate right afterwards was a remarkable thing. She's literally started melting like the witch in the. We've seen her; she looks physically terrible. It just goes to show you how much these people were driven by their pathological need for absolute power. It was almost like there was an entity inside her who wanted to be in the White House. And once it didn't get its way, it left her to die.
Speaking of her, what do you make of this projection of their crimes on the right as crime? Like, that's a bad way to put it. Hillary was on an interview the other night, and she said, that the Democrats, couldn't be civil with these people, i.e. the Republicans, because they're trying to destroy what we created. I don't know if you heard that interview.
No, but it doesn't make sense because it was a one-party system before that. I mean, she was basically a neocon, and so was Obama. They were working at the same agenda that the Bushes and stuff are coming along with. The Republicans don't seem to be particularly happy. The mainstream old school Republicans despise Trump as well. She's desperately trying to keep that duopoly of the kind of the old, and you have it in every country, not just the United States, every country, Ireland, Britain, everywhere. Oh, it's a left wing and a right wing. I pretend left wing and I pretend right wing. But they're ultimately the same bullshit working together for the same globalist agenda. I think that she was desperate. No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that the greatest crime that he's committed is that they don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything wrong as far as I can see.
No, he's done nothing wrong. He's just behaved himself. He's actually behaved. He's been an administrator, which is what it's all we want from politicians. Just administrate. We don't want philosophies. We don't want 1,000 points of light. We don't want shining cities on a hill, a place called hope. What we want is you're the boss. The place needs running. Manage it. Yeah. And that's what he did.
Platitudes and abstractions only get you so far, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that she represents the world of platitudes and sinister globalism.
So from recently, I've been researching into constitutional law and to the Constitution rather, and treason specifically. And to incite people to obstruct the president from doing his job is technically treasonous.
Yep.
And we've got all these Democrats out there screaming, go make their life hell, get in their face, and we've seen it on TV or not TV, but on YouTube and whatnot. It's interesting that no one else is looking at it from that angle.
No, it's funny. I was thinking about that as well. But look how low they stunk with KN West, spewing all these like these liberals spewing these disgusting racial terms.
Oh, I know.
Them, I mean, they showed their real colors right there and then.
Mm-hmm. Did you see Don Lemon talking about Kanye? How he's racist and he's an Uncle Tom and all this shit. It was
shocking.
It was shocking. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's like
and it was a woman. They would call her a stupid bimbo, while claiming to be defenders of women's right for expression. Let me tell you what Trump really is. He's a Luciferian attenuator. Mm-hmm. He is Lucifer. He is Loki. He has blasted the light upon them, and they've all been seen for what they are. And that's what he is. This is a very powerful Lucifer. He talked about being a Christian, but
I get it.
He's very much a Luciferian president. Yeah. And he has shone the light in the dark corners, and the cockroaches were shown for what they were.
And the roaches
he's insistent on gold behind him, gold in the White House being shown with gold, Apollo paintings and all that. I mean, he's assembled all the symbols that are speaking to people on the deeper, more unconscious level, as opposed to his level of speech. And so it's very clear he's intentionally projecting that.
Well, when he was doing the speeches during the campaigns, he was doing Maduras and stuff like that to protect his the Hindu, the Vedic hand symbols. Who told him that? Who to protect himself from psychic attacks?
Mudras.
Who told him that? And then you have the Muppets going, "Oh, that means white power. Go away, you morons."
People need to look at the mudras. Yeah, I mean, that is so simple-minded.
Also, I don't remember where I heard this, but I did. He's been doing executive orders and specific things and taking meetings on specific lunar calendar days, like on full moons and new moons.
Yeah, he's not a stupid man. In fact, they're stupid. That's why they call him stupid. Even if you go to Trump Tower, I mean, I lived in New York. You look at that building. It's got a certain kind of style about the architecture of the trees growing up the side. And I mean, the man who has a great understanding for symbolism and for gravitas. Mm-hmm. He's got a great understanding of that. And you had, his inauguration ceremony was bullshit because he didn't have U2 or Bruce Springsteen. He didn't need it. Yeah,
there's a definite for people that say he's an idiot. I question that. Listen, I don't have skin in this game. I'm an observer. I find it all fascinating and lots of humor. But people that say he's an idiot are on. I'm starting to question their intelligence if they're not able to parse out and dig deeper into actually what's being presented to us symbolically, which is really where the communication happens. And he is masterful at these things. He's masterful at timing. He's masterful at looking like a fool. And he's masterful at draping himself in potent, ancient symbology through color and form.
And he uses Twitter like a magic wand.
He's modern, right?
He has millions of neurotics who can sit on Twitter all day long, waiting to be traumatized. You want to talk about Pavlovian conditioning? It's like Pavlovian conditioning meets self-gaslighting. And they sit there waiting, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? Oh my God, what did he just say? And it's like, and then you think you're winning? You think he's not in control? I have to laugh at that. He uses Twitter like a magic wand. It's the most.
It's awesome to behold.
Yeah.
For me, this is all
out of nowhere.
Well, this is, what's extra great about this is that everyone's showing their true colors here. We're seeing how triggered everyone gets. And then in that process, they're showing what they weren't showing before. And so we're starting to see the breakdown of personas and looking below and beneath, which is, it's also, it's like stepping out of waking life and into another state of consciousness where we can see what's actually at play under personas, under big personas that have been in places and positions of power for quite some time.
I'll give you a great example. I'll give you a great example. When Trump came into power, this guy, Justin Trudeau, and the media up in Canada thought that they could be the anti Trump. So if he did all the politically correct things, all the platitudes, it would somehow make Trump look like a fool, and he would vanish because Canada has this cool prime minister. When was the last time you heard from him? He just made himself look like the biggest clown on the face of the earth,
Got
He sure
smacked
did.
down by Trump too.
and we haven't seen him in ages. From him, like, trying so hard to be the prince of platitudes, he's gone. It just goes to show you that even Canadians are embarrassed by it. But it's like and they're pretty easygoing people, but I don't blame them. It was like, I mean, most Canadians I know are like, this guy's making us look like a clown. Uh, this whole idea. Oh, do you remember all the celebrities that were going to go to Canada? What happened to them? They didn't go. I mean, we'll never see anything like this again. We're blessed to be living through this time.
It is it I feel blessed for sure. Big
W-
will
One
always
person
keep on
moved.
turning.
I forget who it was, but one person did move to Canada. One celebrity.
Well, you're not going to get away from the fact that it is always going to turn. That's one thing that I always noticed in death of people close to me. The world continues on. Something can be really devastating to me, and my world is slowed down or stopped, and I'm in pause, and the world continues on. People are still going to work. There's this humming, there's this fighting, drama, all this. And that leads me to this question, Thomas. What do you think the lesson of death is? Since it's an inevitability, we come in, we understand that's a point in space time, right? No matter what our philosophical understanding of anything is, and what faith or convictions we have, we still all meet that point in space time. And even in the idea of this being an illusion or a dream, that's still a point in which we engage. So, what do you think is going on with it?
Well, being a very much a typical Celtic pagan, I totally am down with the idea of reincarnation. I know it to be a fact. It's not even like something I believe in, or I know reincarnation is real. I've met people from previous incarnations of me in this life, and I will meet them again. Where it's far more complex than just like you're born and you relive again, and you pay. The idea that you get like a Vedic ideas, but I mean, the Irish idea, the Irish pagan idea of reincarnation is fascinating. You have basically a thing called like a soul that travels through different experiences, and it's called a somnath in Irish language. And so, for instance, you could be reunited with your loved one as your son in the future, but you may appear to her as a salmon that she's eating. So your soul was in the salmon that was caught out of the river. She eats the salmon, and then she gets pregnant, and your somnus or your soul is passed into that. I think that's a very beautiful way of look. I think it makes a lot of sense to me, and that way you experience every aspect of the universe, not as a punishment thing, but almost like an experiential thing. So I absolutely very much down. And just as I write in sorcery, the spiritualist movement, which got a lot of flack in the late Victorian era, did prove beyond the doubt that life after death does exist. I mean, and that was brought amazingly into focus by the whole thing with spirits who couldn't read and write because they never got education. And it was only middle class people who could actually communicate through writing back into the spiritualist groups. And that was like bulletproof proof that reincarnate that there's life after death. What does death mean as a thing? Death is a reset button to begin a new program, just like 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. You might even go back, who knows? You might even run the same program again. But I do think that's what it is. I think that's ultimately what it is. People shouldn't be afraid of it. Of course, no one wants to die young, or no one wants to die of a disease or anything like that. But having said that, I absolutely, beyond a shadow of doubt, totally believe in reincarnation. And here's another thing I want to bring up. I think it's optional. I think if you don't believe in anything after death, you'll shut your program down. And I often wonder, there's some very sinister, dark occultic motives to all this growth in in extreme atheism and material. Oh, you're nothing. You're nothing. When you're gone, it's over. This kind of thing, and having all these people believe this, because I do believe they will terminate their consciousness, that they will dissipate and they will be gone. And even in the Kabbalah and in Orthodox Judaism, there's a process called the Gilgul, where you actually get yourself ready to be reincarnated. Judaism does have a form of reincarnation, which if you feel like your life hasn't been satisfactory, you can redo it again. But you actually work on it. You have to get yourself ready. You process it. And I'm very suspicious of all this stuff about saying, "Oh, you're just a meat puppet. You're just a meat robot. There's nothing in there. And when you die, you're gone." We want to talk about dark forces running the world. I think that could be an indication. I would say running the world. We're running the world. We're the good guys. But I mean, if there's a dark force, a dark demonic force behind it that definitely has a grievance with humanity, what more powerful way to do it than to encourage them to believe that after they die, there's nothing? Because then you're having a military type of idea, and you're wiping out the enemy. So people need to be very careful about that.
So if our world, this realm, is a projection from consciousness, as we discussed earlier, wouldn't that make these dark forces part of us, part of consciousness?
Yeah, that's what the whole thing is. They are part of us. I mean, I wrote a book on
Collective shadow,
psychopaths.
maybe. Sorry.
Yeah, I wrote two books on psychopaths, and I came to the conclusion that psychopaths probably do exist to make us better as a species, because how we react to their appalling behavior, and how, whether they get in government, or whether they're serial killers, or whether they're pedophiles, or anything, it actually makes us grow as a species in a compassionate way. You look at a lot of the things we have today, they're things of how we responded to things like slavery, to the Holocaust, to civil, apartheid in South Africa. We've tried to become a more compassionate species, and it was that the trigger mechanism was that psychopathic pathology that allowed it. So, absolutely, shadow and light works together.
And the only thing I want to say, just a observation, that is a form of trauma-based mind control.
Yeah.
So
in a more kind of
sensitive way,
osmosis.
Yeah.
Osmosis.
A constructive way. How's it?
Yeah. It is. It's like, we're being prodded. But also it leads to things like art and philosophy. How many, it's led to great literature, it's led to great songs, it's led to great music. So there's also, it's far more refined than there's pieces of shit out there who are destroying the humanity. Let's stop them. When you look at it, it's so much more fantastic. We have the world of mythology, we have the world of literature and art. A lot of a lot of darkness creates the blues music. It goes on and on. I mean, I come from a country that has a phenomenal cultural legacy built out of suffering, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And so there's once you look at it in a holistic way, in that sense, I think it's very healthy.
Goodness.
I was wondering where your ideas are, and I kind of feel like I know where you're going to go with this, especially from watching your videos and all this. But what are your ideas on free will and destiny, intent and fate, and how possible is it to change a whole trajectory of a timeline one's on?
I think fate and free will work together. I think it's almost like a game of Dungeons and Dragons, where whatever our internal dungeon master has set up a scenario, a campaign for us, and we have our cognitive functioning and our abilities to adapt and change as it goes along. Again, it all seems to be a growth process, development process, and even if if you look on it that way, I think that's what it is. I think it's fate and free will, and it's a feedback mechanism.
Do you think this is kind of something we've been, I mean, we talk about this a lot, but we've been exploring it a little bit more. The idea of the internet, and especially as the internet of things is getting more connected, is it becoming its own entity or consciousness?
Oh yeah, that's happened. That's happened already, and entities are living on the internet.
Could you
Uh,
elaborate on that a bit?
well, last year in 2016, 17, sorry, Facebook shut down their servers because of the artificial intelligence mainframes were talking to each other in a language that the developers couldn't understand. Now, it's actually more scary than that.
It was
The,
in pictures they were doing it.
yeah, they were talking in symbols. They were developing a religion. They were developing a religion, and how it was doing. How I know this is that a friend of mine works. Most of the American Ireland is like the Silicon Valley of Europe. So they're all here. Google, Facebook, all their stuff is all in Dublin. And he worked for Facebook, and he said it went beyond symbols. He says they were almost developing a religion, and it was happening at an exponential rate that they would know. They shut down the servers in the US and in Ireland at the same time, just to kill literally a kill switch. It was developing, and this has happened on other systems as well. The complexity, and also I'll give you an example. There's a demon called Choronzon, and Choronzon is the babbler in the abyss. And Choronzon is all over social media. It creates this fake. Now I know it's hard for people to say like, what? No, it's an energy form. It's an energy form that has a specific consciousness, trajectory, and it's to create chaos and confusion. And a lot of these fake accounts, I think, on on Facebook are this kind of idea. Now, if 2 years ago, a year ago, I was getting endless fake girly accounts. Some girly in a short, skinny dress, if she's from Africa, whatever, Eastern Europe, and sending me friends requests. I was blocking them, right? There was 3 profile pictures, and she's showing her ass in a selfie or a low cut dress. And the other honey traps. It's obvious, right? Well, then I said, "Fuck it, I'm going to start talking to these women and see what's behind it. If it's a guy in Nigeria after my credit card, let's just play. Let's just play." Well, it was bizarre. So you'd get like some girl, whatever her name was, like Susan, and she'd go, "Hi," and I'd go, "Hi." And she'd go, "What's your name?" And no, she'd say, "Where are you from, Thomas?" "No, where are you at? Where are you at? Always, where are you at?" And I said, "Ireland." "Neat, neat." And then she say something like, "Do you like this kind of music, or do you like this kind of?" And I would write back things, and I'm not kidding you. I would write things back like, "So, do you think that the British Exchequer was correct in going from the gold standard back in 1908? Where you at?
That's
Do
pretty funny.
you?" Yeah, yeah. I have a head like a football, and my feet are made out of marzipan and gelatin. Where you at? And it wasn't a script.
It's terrible English.
It was trying to learn me.
Yeah.
It was trying to. It was now the complexity has gone from that 2 years ago of these kind of mindless dregs entities on the internet to now they're developing frightening complexity where they're creating plausible backstories. I think, and this is where I think a lot of us worry on the. You see, there's been lots of funny things going on Facebook lately. It's been suddenly shut down. YouTube went down last night. I think these things are now developing near full complexity, and it's funny how it happened at the same weekend that a whole thing came out. This
Yes.
non playing characters that I think that they're more complex. So they're like They have better photographs, a better backstory. When you say to them, what do you think? Do you think England was wrong to jump from the gold standard in 1980? Instead of going, where are you at? They go, I don't really know much about that stuff. This is stuff that people got to be, because just because I think chaos is now happening on the electromagnetic spectrum as well, and it's happening into the digital domain. I mean, I did a talk and then called the digital gin 2 years ago, and I predicted this would happen, but it's happening at an exponential rate now, and I think they're on the verge of losing control. I think you're going to have, um, and it's spooky as well. I think you're going to have not only look. Let's look at porn. Just think of the amount of emotional and psychic energy that's poured into the internet through guys uh, having
Jerking
a
off, yeah.
having a hand party watching porn all over the world, right? That's got to go somewhere, okay? That's got to pool somewhere. That's got to feed something, okay? It's got to be more than that. It's not. It's
Yes.
and
Yes.
and in terms of, look, you look at Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin can grow that rate as a cryptocurrency, to the levels it did, and use up the power and the energy it does. Well, what the hell do these other things do? So I think, again, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not worried about it. I'm definitely fascinated by it. I'm definitely,
Yeah.
we're living in a real life science fiction movie at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good for everyone to be aware that these possibilities may exist and think of ways you can harness it in your own works.
Exactly. Yeah. You
Mhm.
mean, like, we could. That's the way I'm thinking it. It's like, you have the potential to have an army of very powerful servitors at your disposal.
Yep.
Then you
Yep.
could use it for a fight. You could. I mean, I'm thinking down the road. It's like, if I can find one who's really good at financing and investing to make me rich. I mean, this is the way you don't, instead of being afraid and thinking they're going to strangle you, or find ways that, like, they could help you, as you said. This is the purpose of chaos, to find the emerging cultural energetic forces and to ride it like a surfboard. And it doesn't matter where it comes from or the intensity it comes with, but it's there for the taking.
Yep.
Excuse me.
I have just a funny little question. What is it? And this is assuming you pay attention to this kind of stuff. But as far as stuff that's being put out on TV or Netflix, these series, have you been watching any of them? And if so, which ones do you think are really significant with what is being presented?
I
So,
thought the
like,
show about Jack Parsons was very good. What was it called?
Strange Angel. Yeah, it was very
Yeah, I
good.
thought I thought that was because it's introducing the masses to these things that they didn't know anything about. I think it was very amazing films in recent years. I think the Irish movie A Dark Song was a fantastic film for it.
Absolutely.
And then there was the American film Hereditary. Now, I know people didn't see it through that, but they should have. That was deeper than what it was presented on the surface. I mean, that whole film was an invocation, or a summoning of Paimon again, our friend,
Mhm.
and A Dark Song was a beautiful film, absolutely beautiful, and a masterpiece. And the fact that even I don't think there's been a film with that level of spiritual depth since The Exorcist, which is actually quite a spiritual film if you actually get past the shock
Piece, yeah.
value of it.
Yeah.
And uh, that I mean, I don't watch a lot of I'm just going to go through my head. I don't watch a lot of TV and stuff like that. Strange Angel, and I think for me, the movie A Dark Song left an enormous impression on me, because it was definitely a movie made by a director and a crew who knew about ceremonial magic.
If you get a chance, definitely check out the new Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Oh, I've been told about it. One of my friends said it wasn't that good, but it is worth watching.
I think so. I think you will see what I see in it.
Cool,
It's
cool.
very deep psychological stuff.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
do
And
we have any questions
we
from the
do.
audience,
We
Chair?
do. Amanda wanted to know if you're going to be doing any more Velocity of Now episodes.
I probably will next week. I was planning this week, but I've had a really bad head cold all week. Yeah, probably next week or the week after. I've got some funny ideas I've written some new comedy sketches and stuff. So definitely
Right.
that's coming up soon.
And what What do you believe is the most effective way to cause positive change in an age where information is becoming increasingly hard to acquire or I don't know, without inner knowing, I guess? I don't know what that last word is you said.
Can you? I missed the gist of the
I'll
question.
read it again. It's the best way for people to cause positive change where coming upon actual factual information is getting harder and harder.
Don't become too emotionally tied into it. I mean, everything is real, nothing is real. Develop neutrality towards information. Don't put emotional capital into it, and don't observe and wait. That's what I would say.
Very good.
Okay. Thomas, do you see yourself as a little boy in a messed up world?
No, I see myself as a messed up boy in a little world. I don't know. I know.
Well, I know this idea that I know for a long time. This happened to me too. Is I always felt like the kid in the room with adults when I spoke, when I worked, whatever. And that changed years ago. But I mean, I think that's what he was getting.
I think when I was a young kid, I was way too grown up. I was too serious, like I said at the beginning, and I think since I've been about mid-30s, I don't give a shit anymore. So I'm sort of going back. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, I'd say I'm enjoying having a laugh.
I've enjoyed it my whole life. I think that's all the questions we had from the audience.
Yeah, and that gets us to about 2 hours.
Definitely. We're coming a little bit under. So I'd like to thank you, Thomas, for coming on the show. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah,
and where can people find you and all that, Thomas? What's your...
well, they shut down my website.
I saw that.
So Thomas Sheridan Arts is like now history. I mean, I still have the domain name, but they won't give it back to me. My new website is www.mossuponstones. And
I will put that in the description.
And also streetdruid.net.
Okay, I'll put those in the description for everyone.
Yeah, and my web for this kind of stuff, my YouTube channel, Open Source Occult TV.
That I do have in the
Yeah, which I love.
Great. It was funny when the week you started that channel, I did start a channel called Open Source Magic, and I got the domain name osmagic.com or .org, I forgot. But then you put up that, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to compete with Thomas. So I never did anything with it.
Well, we obviously Top did the same thing. I just picked it because I thought it had a nice ring to it. That it was kind of like a nice ring to it.
Same here. Here. Right.
And also, it got away from Victorian ancient ideas of sorcery. It was more modern sounding.
Yeah, that stuff's lame.
Yeah.
We were doing stuff so much more next level. Anyway, thank you so much again for being on the show, and I hope you had a good time. Yeah,
I had a great time, actually. I was pleasantly surprised. I forgot about my head cold, and I have to say I love the questions. You've asked me a lot of questions no one else did, so thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
This was a great pleasure, Thomas. Seriously, Jerry and I have both been just reeling to have you on.
Yeah.
So, and I also want to say thank you to the chat. I'm not there, as you know, but my big love goes out to everyone. We have a great core group here.
Oh, someone just asked when your next book's coming out.
The next book, The Anvil of the Psyche, will be out before Christmas, the second edition of that.
You can do it on Lulu again?
What's that?
We're going to be on Lulu?
Yeah. I mean, I totally don't deal with publishers anymore because there's more money in doing it yourself. You've more control, and I mean, it allows me to hire my own artwork people and stuff like that, so I can help friends out. Right. So I do like that kind of. I like the freedom of that, and I've gotten good at it. It was tricky at first, but I've gotten good at it now. And I've got a ton of films coming out. I've got loads of great plans, including I'm going to be taking some trips to Asia and stuff like that. So lots of new stuff coming.
All right. Well, we're all very much looking forward to those. So thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in and however you are hearing this. And we'll see you next week. Our guest will be closing out our witchy October month is Frater Ashen Chasan. I forget his real name, Brian something. Anyway, he's a pretty awesome hypnotist, magician. He does Solomonic magic. It's going to be a good chat. Be sure to tune in. Be sure to give us a like if you like the show, and subscribe if you want to hear more. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, everyone.